Hey, this is Tiqqle, and in this video, we're going to go over the latest changes in the Shadowlands beta build across Enhanced, Resto, and Ellie. Really, it's mostly Enhanced, some Ellie, maybe some Resto, but we're going to go ahead and jump into it. There were mainly two posts that describe the changes. Number one, it was the build changes themselves, which we'll go over, but then there was also a blue post that came out from Blizzard about Shaman Changes in general. So let's go ahead and jump into it. First, the build notes, specifically starting with Enhance. Enhance has some changes here that are very unclear on what it means, and I'm here to help because when I used to look at the patch notes, I never understood, what does this mean, Tiqqle? What does it mean? Apply an aura. Basically what it means is on an Enhanced Shaman overall, there's an aura that's applied. It's basically a plus damage or minus damage or throughput, or it says damage or healing done, a plus or minus across the entire, like a group of abilities or the entire class or certain things like that. So in this case, we can see what used to be there was a negative 50% effectiveness for Enhanced Shaman across these abilities. That has changed to negative 35. It seems weird, but effectively, this is a plus 15% damage and healing increase for these abilities. Chain Heal, Elemental Blast, Chain Lightning, Lightning Bolt. I'm assuming this is Earthen Spike, and then you also see some things in here like Overloads, but ignore those. We don't believe they affected Ellie at this time. Now, this is great. That's a buff. Like, let's start there. I know there's some, you already know what's coming, but that's awesome. Look, hey, 15% damage, I'll take it. Those are our spenders as well. I've been saying that we really need Chain Lightning to get buffed for Enhance for cleaving and damage, as well as Lightning Bolt. Make it feel more satisfying to use that HAILSTROM weapon stacks. Now, that's that. The other big change here, and it affects PvP in the biggest way, is that Healing Surge and Swelling Waves have been removed from this modifier. What does that mean? Well, that used to be the case that if you just sat there on an Enhanced Shaman and you would cast Healing Surge, it would be 50% less effective than if you were on an Ellie Shaman. So for example, in game right now, if I highlight my Healing Surge, it heals for 4.5k health. If I it used to be 2.5k. Okay, and then if I switch to Ellie would be 4.5k. So they've taken off of this negative 50% modifier, which effectively is buffing what used to be last build, the Healing Surge by 50%, making it do it 100% of its effectiveness through just casting it. So what does this mean? It means that an Enhanced spamming you with heals without even using HAILSTROM weapon stacks is going to heal you just as much as an Ellie Shaman spamming heals. Now you only can get 4 off because of the mana cost, but still that's a huge buff to healing throughput. I cannot state this enough. It's actually crazy how much healing it does. It's great. We love it. It scratches some of the defensive itch, but in reality, we need damage reduction. We need a PvP talent like Shamanistic Rage. That's going to help us in those stuns, in those really rough situations. Now, coupling this buff of Healing Surge with the 20% now increased healing from Earth Shield, coupling that with healing, Stream Totem, coupled with the defensives that are the healing throughput conduits you can get that are Resto, coupled with the Resto Legendary, we might be okay in PvP. Maybe, but it's tough to really say. So this was one I wanted to point out. This is actually a big deal, and I'll show you how effective it is in game. We were testing all this stuff on stream all night, and now I'm making this video just so you know. This is actually healing you for like 10k when you use HAILSTROM weapon stacks. Now you have to remember, Enhanced Shaman have this ability where, again, you melee and it gives you these procs of HAILSTROM weapon stacks. When you get to 5, it actually increases your next heal or damage by 100%. This means instead of healing me for 4.5k, now it's healing me for almost 10k, 9 point whatever k that it comes out to, right? That's huge. 10k healing, that is instant cast, and if I store 10 stacks of HAILSTROM weapon, now I have 2 Healing Surges. Maybe Enhance is going to be okay. Now, it will require us to get momentum in PvP, right? We're going to have to be meleeing, we're going to have to be building those stacks up, but it is good news, at least for us. Now, the next change has to do with applying a brand new aura. This is going specifically to Ellie Blast. This is getting a 25% increased damage. That's how I'm reading this, interpreting it. It's a little weird because you do see it over here as well. It's also within this aura. So technically, I think Ellie Blast got a 15% buff going from negative 50 to negative 35, and then an additional plus 25% buff. So that's 40% additional damage to Ellie Blast. I was using it tonight. it was slapping. It was feeling pretty good, and for certain builds, I think it's going to be viable. Now, again, this appears to be just enhanced. Now, the question might be, does it affect Ellie? It's really tough to call that. I don't think so because it's under enhance if I'm reading this explicitly, but we're going to have to absolutely test it. Similar here, we see lightning bolt overload and stuff like that. It's not affecting Ellie, we don't believe, but we'll have to see if this gets updated at all. So that's a huge baseline change. I want to explain that because people weren't understanding it really right off the bat, and it's confusing. So that's the main change. Now let's go ahead and go into the next changes for Enhanced Shaman. Fire Nova. Fire Nova is getting increased the damage scaling from 25% attack power to 42% attack power, effectively almost doubling the scaling. Now we tested this tonight, and to be very honest with you, it still does not feel worthwhile. And the main reason is it is very global cooldown intensive to spread your flame shocks. To get off a Fire Nova, even though now it's doing about 900 damage per target, and you can spread it on, if you get your flame shocks out, you can get it spread and then pop it, you're now talking, you get some multipliers in there, but it really wasn't that effective. I was able to get it up to hitting 10 targets total across all the flame shocks. That was doing about 10k damage, but it was costing me 3 or 4 global cooldowns to get my flame shock spread, and then using Fire Nova. So that took about 10 seconds to get 10k damage out. And then if we compare that to Hailstorm, even though we'll get down to that, comparing it to Hailstorm, which is just your basic rotation, it was already beating it. So I was out there sweating in the Mythic Plus, and in reality, Hailstorm was just beating it by being Hailstorm. So again, I still don't think this is going to scratch the itch, and I keep using that reference, but I don't think it's going to be enough without the spreading of Flame Shock, which just doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist right now. So that's sad. But so I still think this isn't really viable, but they're trying, but it's still not really worth it in my opinion at all. It's not. Next, Forceful Winds. We hate to see this. There's a nerf going from 50% increased damage of Wind Fury to 35%. And this stacks 5 times. So effectively at 5 stacks, you're now at 75% less increased damage at that top end. Now, I would say this only really affects the build taking Doomwind's Legendary. It's really tough to maintain the 5 stacks in general, especially on single target. So I do think that this is really something that just affects that one build, that Doomwind's build. And that's probably why they're knocking it down the way that they are, because they might still feel it's too strong. Many times in the Mythic Pluses I've been running, that's been my top damage by a landslide, and that's probably bothering them a little bit. Now, the next one is Hailstorm. Hailstorm, and so just recap, I don't think this is that big of a deal. It's obviously a nerf. It's going to reduce our damage, but I think for the build, I think it's actually going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I'm glad they didn't nerf the baseline weapon imbue further. That's where I'm happy. Now, Hailstorm's got nerfed again, 35% to 15% increased damage based on the number of stacks of Maelstrom you consume. So you can only consume 5. So this used to give Frost Shock a 175% increased damage, and then you would hit 5 targets with that, increased by 175%. And now, if you're going to be buffing it by, it's only going to be a 75%. Now, increased damage for the Frost Shock. Now, to be honest with you, a lot of people said that this is going to kill this talent. We tested it out tonight, and it actually was still quite good. It ranked right below Storm Strike in terms of how much damage it was doing in our damage distribution. So in my mind, it's not like it's dead. It's still quite strong. So I do still like this talent. I honestly believe they're trying to bring that in line with Elemental Assault. Elemental Assault is a build I was running as well. Feels very good, especially with Frost Witch Legendary and some talents you can pick there. I was testing it out in a Mythic Plus, felt quite good. And to be honest, I like the Elemental Assault playstyle a bit more than Hailstorm. Hailstorm's cool. The cleave mechanic is cool, but I think the other one's going to also be competitive now. Hailstorm was really doing far beyond more damage than the other one, so I think they're evening out. And then Fire Nova, they tried to modify, but their change wasn't enough. So that's where it is. I definitely think this is still viable. You can check the VOD of us doing the dungeons. I was running with 3 Enhanced Shamans at a certain time, doing different builds each. I was Fire Nova. One was for Hailstorm. Another one was whatever. Right, so we're testing and feeling things out. We're doing that every day, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for all specs of Shaman, so don't worry. Now, the next one is Ice Strike. Ice Strike, strike your target with Icy Blade, dealing, now they've almost doubled it, from 65% scaling to 115% scaling. Frost damage and snaring them. Now, you might think this is good, and it was hitting for about 2.2k normal hits, non-crits. That's actually not bad. The problem is this: when you start to include a Ice Strike, you start to reset your shocks. And you might think, oh, now I get my Flame Nova out. Yeah, but it's just so global intensive that it really muddles up things. It really, puts molasses in the wheels. I mean, it really kind of makes you feel like you're not really a fluid rotation anymore, especially when you're thinking just that much about the rotation. I tried Ice Strike when I went Fire Nova, and I went LE Blast, and it was far too much. It was just too much, and maybe there's a place for this with a Hailstorm build, but for now, I will tell you, I'm still not that impressed with this. I still think Storm Flurry is doing well. That's kind of where I sit with it. It's just too much. It's using a global, but it's also refreshing another global. And a lot of times we only have maybe one opportunity or one area where we really need another global. And this is not the play, in my opinion, compared to some other things you can get like Earthen Spike or, I don't know, refreshing, Wind Fury or using Healing Stream or like anything else. I just think that this is like a little much for me. Lashing Flames, which is a particularly strong single target talent on the first tier. Lava Lash now increases the damage of Flame Shock by 100 for 20 seconds. That's actually a really long time. If you think about it in Mythic Plus terms, unless you're on a tyrannical boss or what pull is going to last 20 seconds, unless you're on a very high key and the mobs are very tough, but even then you need to be shredding them down. So for me, this change is kind of interesting, giving this more value. To me, it allows you to Flame Shock multiple targets and then start Lava Lashing them one individually. But again, the problem is, the pack is going to die. The people are doing big damage. You're pushing Mythic Plus keys in that sense. But the other thing is in the raid, that's where I think you might see value. Keeping this up on multiple targets, being able to burn them down over time. This is where we'll see this do value. I think this is a good single target ability, but now I think Elemental Blast will be competitive. So that's my review of those changes. Let's keep going down. The Night Fae Covenant ability, which is a channel for like 3 seconds. Yep, 3 seconds. It does a lot of damage, right? It does a lot of single target or spread damage up to 20k pretty much when you're using it on the enhance, right? But the problem with enhance was, you're going to be channeling, you're not going to be meleeing. When you're not meleeing, you're not generating Maelstrom Weapon, and you're not feeding into your rotation. Well, Blizzard is trying to address that by giving you 3 stacks of Maelstrom Weapon when you go through that channel. So you channel for 3 seconds, it gives you 3 stacks of Maelstrom Weapon. Hooray! You didn't lose out on too much. The question is that really significant enough? Like, for me, it does allow you to get, like, Storm Strike will come back on cooldown while you're doing that. Make sure it's on cooldown when you start the channel. Make sure your other abilities are on cooldown so that it actually, like, allows you to be able to use the Maelstrom Weapon and, like, fill in global spots and also have Storm Strikes available, etc. So to me, it's still like, it's okay, but this isn't a game changer. It doesn't change my perspective of the Night Fae ability. If you're going to go Night Fae, you're going to go Night Fae, right? I really believe the Covenants are going to come down to, if you're going to go it, you're going to go it. Some people that aren't following the best suggestion are going to just do things because they want to do them, and I encourage you to do that if you're into it. I mean, it's going to be your gaming experience, and I definitely encourage that. So this to me is not a game changer. It doesn't excite me that much, and to be honest with you, you really, 3 Maelstrom Weapon stacks is nice, but it's almost like counteracting the fact that you would have probably gotten 3 while you're channeling and done Storm Strikes and other things, other damage abilities. So that's kind of where that stands. The last change is the last change before we get into the other blue post, which is a big deal, is the potency for Night Fae. They made it so it no longer increases damage and channels 30% faster, which is like, damn. No longer increases damage. That's kind of a bummer. Now, it does make it so the cooldown is reduced by 25 seconds, making it down to a 1.6 minute cooldown. Clearly, you're going to get further down. This brings it more in line with the Venthyr ability, Chain Harvest, which has a 1.5 minute cooldown, which is very close to 1.6. But the damage output is a bit different, and we kind of did a test where we saw that Venthyr is, specifically with Enhance, is instant cast, right? And it scales with Maelstrom Weapon. So at one target, if you use Venthyr, it can hit up to 5. You're actually going to do 6k damage, okay? If you hit 5 targets, you're going to do 30k damage. 5 no crits. And this is supposed to say 1 no crit, okay? Because you're just hitting the target. Then with Night Fae, it's a 2 to 3 second channel, which you can use Spirit Walker's Grace, by the way, on LA. That was a change I didn't know they made until the chat told me. Most attractive and best looking, smartest chat in the land. And then if you use the Night Fae channel on one target, you're doing about 20k, which is 7 non-crit ticks of the channel. If you hit 5 targets, you're still putting out the same number of damage. So you can clearly see here that if you're doing AoE, right, that's when the Venthyr is going to pull ahead a little bit. If you're doing just single target, NERF'd is still doing good damage with no crits. Also, NERF'd does scale off of mastery for enhance. So there's a lot of, give it push and pull. And there's another change that's coming up that might break your heart if you're an LE Shaman, but we're going to get into it. But this is kind of the breakdown of how I view these two abilities when you think about single target versus range. The other part of it is, I mean, this is going to go for LE as well. LE won't scale the NERF'd damage quite as nicely because they don't have the mastery, which increases nature damage like an enhance does. But this is at least the enhanced breakdowns. Way to think about it, right? The 1 target versus 5 target being a huge deal for Venthyr, while NERF'd, it's exactly the same. Doesn't matter how many targets, right? It's actually 4 targets cap. But even if it was 5, right? 5 or 4, it doesn't matter. Now, let's go ahead and jump to the blue post. This is the build changes that they exposed to you. There were some changes that were unmentioned, and then they put out a blue post. The biggest unmentioned change for Enhanced Shaman is that they made Stormkeeper no longer scale off of Maelstrom Weapon. Don't say it was my video. Please don't say it was my video, okay? But I'm a little confused here. They made it so the Lightning Bolt or the Chain Lightning that come out of a Stormkeeper on an Enhance, if you don't know, Enhance absolutely has this ability within their tree. They made it so that if you use that, the scaling of your increased damage by 100% by Maelstrom Weapon does not affect those lightning bolts. And I think that's kind of sad. I mean, I kind of understand why they're doing it because it goes really confusing by using the stacks, but it doesn't consume them, etc. But in my mind, it kind of makes it even stick out as a stranger option as well. This also nerfed the ability to do huge damage as Necrolord. I didn't make a video about it, but we did stream it the other night where we figured out that Necrolord Enhance was potentially awesome combination. I've been not really excited about it, but we did find out, hey, it actually could be insane. But that was quickly changed today, where they made it so the Maelstrom Weapon stacks do not affect that 150% increased damage from Stormkeeper. So that is actually quite sad. I was pretty bummed to hear that, but it is what it is. I just want to let you know that's not in any patch notes. That's not anywhere. So let's go ahead and go to the blue post. The blue post, this is interesting that they did this. I really appreciate the level of communication that this portrays. I hope that the other classes are getting this, and I'm not sure if they are, but this is actually great. So Blizzard said, one quick elemental change that we made this week. Oh dude, it's not quick. Echoing Shock no longer duplicates Venthyr Chain Harvest. Yep. The value of the talent combined with that Covenant ability were too strong together, so the interaction has been disabled. I'm really not very happy about this. I know some people are saying, hey, it's not that big of a deal, but I just like the fact, I mean, Echoing Shock was such a cool ability. The fact that it did indeed work with your Covenant ability, it's pretty cool. I just, I love Echoing Shock. I think it's one of the best abilities. And the fact that it worked, I was just very hyped. Now, in PvP, was it a huge deal? No. In PvE, is it a huge deal? Meh. But it actually did do pretty good damage. And when you echoed it, it could potentially reduce the cooldown because every time it crits, it reduces the cooldown, right? So that's that. I'm not that happy about that, but it is what it is. And it definitely makes it so that other Covenants look a little bit more appealing for the LA Shaman. Now, for example, Kyrian. Kyrian is now a contender now, I think, for AoE. Because of this, for example. Now, the next one, for Enhanced Shaman, several numeric changes have been made to their base abilities to emphasize some abilities that aren't performing as well as intended. Several adjustments have been made to the talents to keep them in the same row closer. Yeah, but they're not really. Fire Nova, not really. Some time ago, we made a change to reduce the effectiveness of all Maelstrom Weapon spenders. That reduction has been reduced. Exactly, we already talked about this, right? Healing has been reduced, no longer even uses that value, but still retains the increased effectiveness and reduced cast time. So that's good. Feral Spirits, you guys have been waiting for it. Here it is, and here's the change. Feral Spirits has been a damage cooldown for Enhanced for years, but slowly has been pushed down less effective recently based on other abilities. In this build, we've increased the attack power scaling of the Feral Spirits by 250% to make it feel more impactful to use as a DPS cooldown. Don't get too excited. Don't get too excited. We tested it out. It's still not doing It's still not doing much damage. It's doing close to 2%, if that, damage in a Mythic Plus. And you might be thinking to yourself, maybe, Tiqqle, maybe you should use the Legendary that makes it proc more often. Are you using Elemental Spirits? Yes, and yes. We use that Legendary. You got out the Wolves multiple times during a boss fight, which feels great. But this damage is still not significant. And it doesn't really warrant, I feel like, us taking that talent unless it's just for RNG nature. I think they really need to make that so it's not RNG. It gives you one of each wolf, number one. Number two, that it actually does damage. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure. I recommend maybe they test it out to see how it feels. I think it's overall 6K damage per press. I think that's what I tested it out to be. And then, so like, I think that's one big thing. And then for PvP, they need to make it have a damage reduction aspect to it, or a healing. But I don't want any more healing. I want damage reduction. Damage reduction is what we need to live. So it's huge that they do that. And that's all I'm going to say. This is not what people expected. I think people expected a lot more. They did also modify, and they don't mention it here either, Elemental Spirits, the talent in the Enhanced Shaman's tree. They made it so that they didn't change it at all. They just made it so that the Firewolf effectively and correctly affects your Flame Shock, your Elemental Blast, and other fire abilities that you already have. It wasn't that they're reworking it. They were just fixing the bugs with it. So that's all that the change was. Let me know what you think about that, guys. That's a huge one. You guys have been messaging me every single day. Where'd the wolf change? Where's the wolf change? What do you think? Put it down below in the comments. Hit that like button, too, while you're doing it. I mean, you dislike the change, but like the video. All right, the several talents have some number tweaks. Okay, so these are the changes we already talked about, right? All these things. Yep, Elemental Blast. This is one that isn't in there, right? Hot Hands now also resets the cooldown of Lava Lash when the talent activates. This Hot Hands is actually really fun. I really like it. I used it tonight. It was pretty enjoyable. The only thing is it's so RNG. In PvE, maybe in a long-term encounter, maybe it averages out to be pretty good. The damage coming out of it's pretty nice. It's a refreshing proc that happens, like a lava burst or something that you press, but it is what it is. You know, it just I don't know. It's just so RNG that I just don't know if it's something that's that reliable. If you get 2 procs or you get 20 procs, I mean, it's just the RNG nature is a little bit questionable. So let's go ahead. One final change made today's Night Fae ability generates Maelstrom. Yeah, so that's it. So that's the blue post. So that's basically the changes. I wanted to take some time. I wanted to go over these changes with you because I think it's a really big deal. As you might have noticed, that Ellie was barely changed. The only change that they received was for Echoing Shock. You may have also noticed that Resto Shaman got no modifications, which makes me pretty sad. You might have also noticed that there was no PvP changes. And just for your peace of mind, I don't think they're quite there yet. If you control F and you look for PvP changes, only 2 classes had PvP changes. So I truly believe that Blizzard is not quite there yet in terms of testing to really be focusing on the PvP aspect. I think we'll eventually see that potentially through PvP talents, hopefully new ones. Please, Blizzard, please, Shamanistic Rage and other new things, fun things, please give me fun. But that's kind of where I see it. Now, I wanted to just review all these changes with you. We did a lot of testing. We're trying new builds every night. We're trying Ellie. We tried Ellie tonight. We're trying Enhance every day. We're doing Resto Shaman almost every day. But so definitely come by the stream, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, twitch.tv/TiqqleThis, and come ask whatever questions or ideas you have, share. Come to a friendly shaman place. Now, with that being said, we'll see you in the next video. Thank you to all the Patreons. Thank you to all the subs for supporting the Shaman dream. And we're going to push into Shadowlands, playing all the Shaman specs, and I really appreciate you guys. And if you haven't subbed to the channel yet and you want to see more content about Shadowlands, about Shaman specifically, and about general news, hit that sub button, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.